Everybody, welcome back to the NC State Insider Podcast. I'm your host and lead beat writer, Tucker Sennett, joining you here tonight to discuss what this Miami loss is going to mean for this NC State team. Um, Obviously, the game did not end in a favorable way for the Wolfpack with that 8-0 run for the Hurricanes down the stretch. And, now the calculus of making the NCAA tournament certainly changes down the stretch here, given a variety of factors. NC State's remaining schedule is incredibly difficult. The rest of the bubble, in terms of the ACC bubble teams and just general teams pushing to make the NCAA tournament, that changes things. And then there's the push for a top four finish in conference to get the double bye in the ACC tournament, which now is going to be a really, really tough thing for this NC State team to achieve with the four conference losses. Miami leapfrogs them in the standings, has the tiebreaker. So it's going to come down to NC State being able to pull out some victories here down the stretch. And things have certainly changed after this result, and we'll dive into it here. I'll start with the ESPN Bubble Watch update. After being a lock, according to ESPN's sort of metrics and such, um, the back-to-back losses have dropped NC State to the should be in category. Um, they're joined by SMU and Miami, who obviously pulled off the big win today and have really boosted their resume with back-to-back wins over North Carolina and NC State. But there's work to be done for the Wolfpack. There really is, and now you've essentially played yourself out of hopes for a maybe a as high as a six seed, unless, something remarkable happens in the next month and this team really finds a rhythm here in the final half of February and the beginning of March. But now your ceiling is maybe a seven with some huge wins. Um, but it's looking more like 8 through 10 for the Wolfpack would make more sense. Um, the schedule is certainly a major concern. I'm not at the point that Will Wade is. Like he said after the game, he thinks this team will be lucky to get to Dayton. They did win 6 games in a row. Now they've lost back to back to other teams that are going to be in the NCAA tournament, I would imagine. And you got two ranked opponents in a row. You host North Carolina on Tuesday. North Carolina is probably going to drop a little bit from that number 11 spot. And then you got a full week off before you head up to Charlottesville to face Virginia. Um, and then, your last major test is going to be Duke at the end of the season. But the schedule is daunting. I think NC State really needs to find a way to go 3-2 in this final stretch here. I think 3-3 was about as bad as NC State could do in the final 6 games, and that's the way Will Wade has been breaking down the season, kind of in groups of six with the 18 league games. So finding a way to get to 500 in this really difficult stretch would be huge for the Wolfpack. The North Carolina game, while important and while really competitive, does lose a little bit of its flair with Caleb Wilson, more than likely, I would imagine, almost guaranteed not to play in this one with his broken hand or fractured hand. Um, he's out indefinitely. I don't anticipate him somehow miraculously recovering from a broken hand in a week. That's not really how that works. But they looked really sharp even without him and Henry Visar in their win over Pitt on Saturday. So the challenge is still there for sure, and Visar will more than likely be back against the Wolfpack, and then there's the issue that I almost think NC State would rather play these games on the road because it really has not been a good team in the Lenovo Center. Three conference losses in their home building to this point. Much better team on the road so far. I really do think, this team has some comfort on the road. Obviously, that backfired against Louisville, but um, I do think there's something about this team on the road in terms of its chippiness and just general effort and urgency that it just doesn't seem to have in its home building. A lot can change between now and then. Other teams can lose. Things can happen. There's obviously a lot of maneuvering to be done. But this Miami loss hurts for sure. It shouldn't affect the predictive metrics and the resume metrics too much. NC State drops to 30th in the Ken Palm, so not a massive drop there. Um, it's still a loss to a pretty good team. I imagine they drop a couple spots in the net, but not too far. But it just creates a stress and a pressure that didn't exist going into this Miami game. And now it's very much there. This team's going to have to handle adversity down the stretch here. It's going to have to find ways to overcome it and dig deep. And I don't think Wade is super confident in his team's ability to get that done at this point. I do think, um, this team has gone into the teeth of competition and heat of battle at times this season and been able to respond. But this team hasn't lost more than two games in a row. This is the first time they've lost two in a row since the end of November. So we'll see if they can pull this out. KenPom still has them projected to finish 21-10 and 12-6 in league play, which would be pretty solid. That has them going 3-3 in this last stretch here. That, like I said, would all but guarantee a spot in the field and not really worrying about that Dayton situation. But um, there's jockeying to be done, and that's kind of the long and the short of it. We'll see how the bracket matrix and some of the other metrics view NC State after this game. There are bigger issues than the resume right now. There's an identity issue for this team. There's finding a player who can take over down the stretch. There's inbounding the ball. That seems to be a problem for this team, especially after today, because they couldn't find a way to get it done at the end of this game against Miami, and it ends in heartbreak for the Wolfpack fans and for this team that had a lot of momentum going over the month of January and into early February, and now that momentum has kind of disappeared, and a two-loss week has things looking a lot more bleak than the that six-game win streak looked. As always, really appreciate you all for tuning in to the NC State Insider Podcast. Feel free to follow me on Twitter at Senate Tucker. You can also follow our website on Twitter at Wolfpack on SI. And of course, get our episodes of the NC State Insider Podcast on the Sports Videos on SI YouTube channel every day. We'll see you next time.